Without further ado, so Fred Adams is our speaker today. For 54 years as the Shakespeare Festival founder, producing director, and executive producer, today his major responsibility is as the festival director of the Festival Capital Campaign, raising funds and awareness for the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Center for the Arts. Please welcome Fred Adams.
Okay. Right here. Right here.
I failed to mention he hurt his leg, and so he's obviously
Yeah, hello.
in a wheelchair. So,
Klutz.
yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Alan. Can you hear me okay? The ones up front are nodding. The ones at the back are sleeping, so it's probably great. Am I okay or not?
We'll move this forward if you like.
Oh, okay. I'm honored to be invited to come here, and for a while I was thinking, what in the world am I going to say? I read all of the materials that was sent regarding focused vision, and I thought, well, great, they're going to have read all of this as well, so what the heck? There's no reason for me to cover that. And I got thinking, maybe what you're wanting is me to discuss my vision and how I came by it and what it accomplished. So I will be talking about the thing that I love the most, the Shakespeare Festival, but I will also be talking about the thing I hate to do most, talking about myself. So forgive me for that as we get started. Alexander Graham Bell wrote, and I liked this a lot, so I'm going to start with it. Concentrate on your thoughts, all your thoughts, on the work at hand. The sun's rays do not burn until brought into a focus. At the age of 8, I informed my parents that I was going to become a theater director, age 8. And at that point, I was given probably the most intelligent and guiding light advice from my father, whom I still maintain was probably the wisest man I ever knew. My father said, just remember, hell is working 8 hours a day at something you do not like. And if you don't remember anything else today, remember that. Follow your dream, follow your passion, do the thing that pleasures you, do the thing that fulfills you, and you will never work a day in your life. You'll go every day to your office or to your laboratory or to your classroom or whatever your choice is, and you will look forward to it. It guided my decision my entire life. After Army, mission, and grad school, I left New York City to establish a theater arts program at what was then called College of Southern Utah, CSU, a branch at that time of Utah State University, a small junior college, less than 900 students. And I began a theater program. Now I'm going to very quickly just take you through that experience. Coming from New York City, having experienced Broadway shows, I was positive that I could show the hicks, I could bring something to the peasants of southern Utah. They had a brand new auditorium, over 1,000-seat auditorium, brand new. It had only been open 2 years, and no theater program, nothing at all there, and so I knew what to do. I selected a season that would just blow them out of the water. We would do a hot, bright, brand new Broadway musical, still running on Broadway at the time, called Bells Are Ringing. I would do a family show that was very successful in New York called On Borrowed Time. And then I would do a Shakespeare play simply because I would not have any more money. My royalties would have all been spent. So we opened First with the play, the comedy, On Borrowed Time. In a 1,000-seat auditorium, I averaged, for the 2 weekends that it played, I averaged between 25 and 30 people a night. You have no idea how lonely 35 people can be in a 1,000-seat auditorium. Well, the musical would do better. Of course it would do better. Everyone loves musicals. Bells Are Ringing was for the next quarter. And I averaged just over 50 people a night. Obviously, no matter how much we advertised, no matter how bright we sang, no matter how well we sold our shows, we got very few people trusting us and coming out. The next show was Taming of the Shrew. I drafted part of the football team to be in it because we didn't have enough boys in the fledgling theater department. And the football players said, "Do we have to wear tights?" I thought, for heaven's sakes, you wear nylon tights to play your games, and you let a guy reach under your butt. Surely you're not going to be embarrassed at a little bit of wearing tights in public. We had to run Taming of the Shrew 2 extra weekends. We sold out. Our audience came from the entire valley. They wanted to see Shakespeare. Well, that got me thinking I better start trying to discover what this community that I had moved into actually was about. And discovered that Shakespeare had been kind of a mantra with them. The earliest settlers in Cedar City had been miners from Wales, Ireland, and Scotland, there to mine iron ore. Brigham Young sent them down in a wagon train. They settled in the valley, Cedar Valley. There was no town, there was no homes, there was nothing there. They were living in their wagons. They had just arrived. They had taken 2 weeks to get there from Salt Lake City. And within a week of their arrival, those miners and their families presented William Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice for their own edification. They wanted what they had left. They wanted the culture that they had before they immigrated to the United States. And so it became obvious to me after 2 more seasons that Shakespeare was definitely the lodestone, actually, of what we would be doing. And so with my fiancée, soon to be my wife, we sat down and outlined a dream. Cedar City had just undergone a horrendous situation. The iron mines, just prior to my arrival, the iron mines of Cedar City had closed. And 700 miners had to pick up their families and leave Cedar City and go other places in order to mine ore. You can't imagine the devastation of losing 700 families in a valley that didn't have more than about 1,800 inhabitants. It was devastating. They had just started the building of a hospital, bonded for it, and now there wouldn't even be a tax base to pay it. Schools would be half empty because the miners had left. At the same time, Governor Clyde, then governor of Utah, announced that the federal government had decided that they were going to run an asphalt ribbon called I15 from Alaska all the way to Mexico. Comprehend it if you can. It would mean that you could get in your car in Fairbanks and never see a stop sign or a semaphore. You could drive unimpeded all the way to Tijuana if you wanted to. And to make it cost effective, the federal government had decided that this I-15 would run through Utah along the Utah-Nevada border, west of Utah Lake, west of the Great Salt Lake. It would bypass all of the communities by anywhere from 12 to 25 miles. Fillmore, Beaver, Nephi, Cedar City, and St. George would all be miles from this freeway. Keeping in mind that tourism was lifeblood to those small communities of southern Utah, this was a devastating plan. Thank heaven wiser heads prevailed, and eventually they decided and moved. First they had to move it closer to Salt Lake, because Salt Lake was the powerhouse. Salt Lake was not going to allow a major freeway to bypass them. So they had to move east to come into Salt Lake Valley. Provo was next, and they said, no, we don't want it on the other side of Utah Lake. We want it on the east side of Utah Lake. And so slowly the powerhouse of politics moved the freeway into some of the most expensive land instead of the cheapest land. And thank heaven it did. But at the time we were planning the festival, the Shakespeare Festival as it was going to be, that freeway was still designated some 17, 18 miles west of Cedar City. My wife and I outlined a dream. We made a blueprint. We planned what we wanted it to be. This was our vision. It would do this. It would take cost. It will cost this. We will have to find out how to run this. We'll have to get answers to these questions. And we made ourselves a full list. We needed money to start and had none. A little junior college didn't have any funds. They couldn't do anything to help. And so I went to various organizations in the community, the Chamber of Commerce, the City Council, the Lions Club, the Elks Club, the Rotary Club, the Kiwanis Club, you know the routine. Every place I could go with a tin cup to see if we could get someone to underwrite our first year budget, which was going to be $1,000. You snicker, but keep in mind $1,000 was a lot of money back in 1960. A lot of money. I must say the Chamber of Commerce, which I thought would probably warm up to this, looked on it as the dumbest idea they had ever heard. The City Council sat there with stunned looks on their faces, with their jaws dropped. It went over like a pregnant pole vaulter. So finally, one of my students' brother was the president of the local Lions Club. And so at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, we went to the Lions Club. I gave my spiel, what we thought it could do for the community, bring people off of that freeway into Cedar City to spend a night, spend money, stay in a motel, eat in a restaurant, etc., etc. One of the Lions raised his hand and said, how much of that $1,000 that you require do you think you can actually raise in ticket sales? I told him all of it. We just needed money to underwrite what we were doing. We didn't think we would ever need a dime of the money. And the Lion said to the pack, herd, whatever lions are, I move that we underwrite the Utah Shakespeare Festival for any amount that they do not raise up to $1,000. It passed unanimously. We had our funds. Within the next ensuing months, I went to every Shakespeare festival in the United States and North America, all 4 of them. Oregon, Ontario, Canada, forget the name of it, Connecticut, and Denver, San Diego. At each one of them, I asked certain questions, and we wrote copious answers. Last question I asked was, what, if you had to do again, would you do, and what would you not do? And those became kind of the blueprint for what we were going to start. We came back. We had created a goal. We knew what we wanted. We had funding, or at least underwriting, for the amount it would take. And the problem then was how to maintain the focus for the next 50 years. We raised over $3,500 that first summer. I didn't need to use any of the Lion Club's underwriting. We had enough money, thanks to that, to fund the second season. So the next year, the second season of the Utah Shakespeare Festival was already funded. The money we raised then funded the third. The money we raised then funded the fourth, and so on. And throughout those years, we never ever took out a loan. We never went into debt, and we never ever stood in fear of going under because of mismanagement. Shakespeare said, "We know what we are, but we know not what we may be." People ask me, did you ever think, here we are, in Cedar City at the present time, we have an almost $40 million project going on. It's one of the largest construction projects in the history of southern Utah, taking place right now, building new theaters and complexes that will serve the Utah Shakespeare Festival for the next century. And people ask, did you ever think the festival would be that successful? I know that's a well-meant question, but it's a rather unenlightened question. Why would we have ever started the project if we didn't visualize how large it would be? We had a vision. We stayed with that vision. Now, there are things that have happened in the last 50 years that we did not envision. In 1981, I received a phone call from the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC. They asked, could we bring actors and technicians over and use your theater to film a television segment on the life of William Shakespeare, because there is no theater other than yours in the world. And of course, we were not about to say no. With the BBC came Newsweek and Time magazine, came major newspaper focus from major papers from major cities across the United States. People in Salt Lake read about the Utah Shakespeare Festival, some of them for the first time, and said, "What on earth is this?" It was really a window opening for us as Jeremy Irons and other Royal Shakespeare Company actors came to perform on a television show that literally was shown throughout the world. Continues, by the way, to be shown. All the World's a Stage is its name, and we get letters every once in a while from Japan or from Johannesburg that they just saw the Utah Shakespeare Festival segment on Shakespeare. It was an unforeseen perk for us, and it just took vision and made it that much stronger. Steve Jobs says one of his mantra is focus and simplicity. And remember, he said, simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to keep your thinking clean and make it simple. But it's worth it in the end, because once you get there, with a single purpose, with a single focus, you can move mountains. In 2000, we received a phone call that we had been awarded the 2000 Antoinette Perry or Tony Award as the outstanding regional theater in the United States. This was an amazing accomplishment, and it was amazing. Yeah, well, it was exciting to go to Radio City Music Hall and stand before some 3,000, 4,000, 8,000, I don't know how many people that hall holds, but it's just gigantic, to receive the Tony Award. I'll never forget the minutes before it started. We're sitting out front watching as the awards are going. Now it's time for us to get up and be taken backstage for our turn. They have seat fillers, people in tuxedos and formals that come in and sit in your seats so that if the camera pans, it continues to look fully sold out. We're backstage in a little curtained area waiting to go on. There's a green light. When the green light goes on, watch. As it goes off, you'll go through the curtains and you'll be on the stage. There's a mirror where you can check your fly. Bottled water. And the stage manager pokes her head in to say, Fred, we've got a little problem. The teleprompter isn't working quite like it should. You might get somebody else's talk. Hope you have yours memorized. Oh, so I'm frantic, trying to remember exactly what it was that we had all unanimously decided I was going to say on that stage. When Dame Edna pulled her curtain apart, poked her head in with her lavender wig on, and said, "Remember, possums, 88 billion people are watching." And the green light went off. I walked out onto that stage, and it was one of those frighteningly wonderful moments because the teleprompter was working. It was my talk on the teleprompter. People think, Steve Jobs once more, people think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on. That's not what it means at all. Focus means saying no to the hundreds of other good ideas that are out there. You have to pick, and you have to pick carefully. The result, 1962, our first year, 21 volunteer students and I began the festival with $1,000 underwriting and a dream. 3,000 guests came from the Wasatch Front to see just what on earth it was all about. And we performed 2 whole weekends. Today, the Utah Shakespeare Company is over 400, drawn from all over the English-speaking world. We operate on a self-generated budget of just over $7.3 million annually. And we bring to the small community of Cedar City an economic development total in excess of $35 million every single summer. Cedar is given literally a second Christmas time. Motels, hotels are filled, restaurants, you stand in line. Summary for me, for the past 55 years, it has consumed my life. There have been offers and opportunities continuously. I had to carefully weigh each one in order to determine how and what it would do to my primary focus. Offers to move the Utah Shakespeare Festival to Southern California, to Tampa, Florida, and even to Springville, Utah. My focus had and has always been to enhance and improve the quality of life in Cedar City. Today, Cedar is one of the top 7 towns in the United States for retirement. CSU has now become Southern Utah University, a fully accredited university with extensive graduate programs and continually ranks academically in the top 100 student universities in the United States. And the Utah Shakespeare Festival, a major player in all of that, now ranks as one of the top 5 Shakespeare festivals in the world. Colin Powell said it, and I've never forgotten it. Always keep your focus on the windshield, not the rear view mirror. In closing, and I've got, if that clock's right, I got 6 minutes, maybe 7. With luck, I can do it in 5. Am I right? Yeah. Huh?
Plenty of time.
As much time as I want? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was a missionary for the LDS Church in Finland. Many of you don't even know where Finland is. I didn't until I got there. I arrived in Finland in November. Within 2 weeks of my arrival in Helsinki, the temperature had dropped to 40 below zero. And it never went up for the next 6 months. The sun sank and it never came back. Depressed, you have not an idea of how much depression I was experiencing. After a lousy day of knocking on doors and being turned away, we rode our bicycles home, took off our boots, not leather, fur boots, because leather would be ruined. Nothing melted, it was never wet. Got out of our outer clothing, had our bowl of hot soup. I was ready to sit down for the night when my companion reminded me this was NVECO, MIA, for those of you who may be old enough to remember, Mutual Improvement Association. We went back to the chapel on our bikes, and a little gal, teenager, who was conducting the meeting, announced that the activity tonight was going to be a retki. For the 3 or 4 of you in the audience that don't speak Finnish, retki is a hike. We're going to hike out of the city into the country to a cottage, a cabin. We got there around a pot-bellied stove. We drank hot fruit juice, and it just goes right through me. And all I could think about is, yeah, but we've got to go back. We've got to hike back. Put on our coats, hats, gloves, mufflers, masks, everything, and we start back again. I'm trailing behind them, kicking at the clods, wishing I weren't a missionary so that I could use some of the Finnish that I had learned. When all of a sudden, one of the girls up front called out in a bright, loud voice, "Katso ka ylöspäin." Everyone look up. And I saw for the first time in my life the aurora borealis, the northern lights. I can't describe them. Curtains of green and blue and pink darting back and forth across a midnight sky, shimmering in the light, so close you could hear it, so electrifying that it made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And long after that miracle had danced out of sight, I stood there absolutely transfixed at a star-studded sky, so black it was like velvet, and stars that you could almost touch. They were so bright. And I thought, what if that child had not called out, "Look up"? I would have spent that entire trip focused on the frozen earth, and I would have missed one of the great miracles of God. And that's what I call out to you. Find your focus. Look up. Work on it. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick. But when you've decided what you want to do, when you've decided what you want to be, stick with it. When it's not as much fun, stick with it. When you're tired and you want to quit, stick with it. And you will experience one of the miracles of God. Thank you. Sure. Questions and answers? If you've got questions, I can make up answers. Who'd like? Yes, right there.
What's your favorite Shakespeare play?
What is my favorite history play or my favorite Shakespeare play? Shakespeare play. My favorite Shakespeare play is A Midsummer Night's Dream. Sorry, I love the complication of it. I love the braiding of 3 and 4 plots, as Shakespeare only could do. None of the plots belong. None of them should stay together, and it just holds itself into a marvelous comedy. I love Richard III, always will, but Midsummer Night's Dream is my fave. Yes.
Have you heard of the new hit Broadway musical Hamilton?
I have heard of Hamilton.
What is your opinion on Hamilton?
I would kill to see it. I would kill. It's a remarkable. It's about one of America's most remarkable founders. I think more remarkable than Jefferson and well, many of the others, but and undersung. He's not. It's a wonderful one. Have you seen it?
No, I want to so bad.
Yeah, $380 a ticket. It's rap. The entire thing's done in rap, but they say it's electrifying. I would sell one of my children, but it's amazing, amazing. If you want a real lesson in American history, study the life of Alexander Hamilton. My heavens, what a man! Okay. Is that it? Oh, one back there, right at the very back.
First of all, I went to SUU for 2 years, so thank you for what you did at SUU.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you did.
I loved it down there.
How you liking school up here?
I love it here.
I hoped you would. Good.
Better or worse?
Different.
My question for you though is, were you familiar with Shakespeare stuff, plays, whatever, when you started the festival? Or
I had an opportunity when I was about 5 and a half. My father and mother took me to California to see a production at the Hollywood Bowl, and it was Max Reinhardt's Midsummer Night's Dream. I was not 6 years of age. I remember I remember it as distinctly as I remember anything in my life, sitting there in the bleachers. It's an outdoor theater, the Hollywood Bowl, and all of a sudden, fairies appeared, and one of them flew. I had never seen a human being fly, and I aspirated my lifesaver. I've never gotten over it. The magic of that production, and I was bit. And Shakespeare has been just a kind of a walk alongside companion for me ever since. Yes, sir.
So I feel like this is kind of a stereotypical, like, classic question that a lot of people ask, and I don't know if there's like, I've always got the same answer, but I don't know if there's not like a super good answer maybe, but can you shed some light on the question of like, how you would recommend deciding like what you like to do?
How do you decide what you want to do? I think by experimentation. I think you have to taste, and that's why most of you are where you are right now. You're discovering. How many of you already know your major? Wow, amazing. And how many of you that just raised your hand are graduate students? Okay. Let me say, every class you take, and you may take a class that you really hate, but out of it you got something that you never got before, and all of a sudden you say, wow, that I could do, that I would like to dedicate my life to. And that's what education is all about. Some people find their focus when they're 8 years old. Some people find their focus when they're 80 years old. The main thing is, when you find it, make sure that it's something you enjoy. Not just something you're good at. Not just something that came easy to you. Not that. That's not the measuring stick. But find something that, I'm going to say, fulfilled you. That made you feel better, bigger, more excited. That you could hardly wait till tomorrow to get back onto it and try it again. That's when you'll know what your focus is going to be. And everybody is given that right. You have your agency. You're going to be able to find the thing in life that is going to fulfill you the most. And notice I didn't just say pleasure you, but fulfill you. And that's really what you want to reach for and try for.
One of your favorite roles?
My favorite role is grandfather. I have 14 of the most spectacular grandchildren on the planet. And that has superseded just every single other thing I have other role I have ever played. Producer, director, actor, they've all been fun, but nothing has the satisfaction of grandfather. I would never have had children if I could have had grandchildren first.
Why is 2016 important in the world of Shakespeare?
Oh, I probably should have mentioned that. This is an amazing year. This is the 400th anniversary, the quadricentennial of the death of William Shakespeare, 1616 to 2016. And this is going to be the year of Shakespeare throughout the world. It's festivals and theater groups and scholars all over the world are focusing on this year. The Folger Library is loaning to every state, Utah included, one of the rare multi-million-dollar folios. So Utah will have a first folio of William Shakespeare's works on display. I understand it's going to be at the Salt Lake Library. I don't know, the dates haven't been announced, but watch for it. It's going to be free, and you get a chance to see the Holy Scriptures. In a way. But a big year. This is a year. This is the year of Shakespeare.
So, kind of going off what Jules was talking about, especially being a father and then a grandfather, we're all students here, and these students are heavily involved. With this leadership program, they're involved in everything that they can possibly do. How is it like balancing that vision? You have kids and grandkids. There's maybe a couple out here who do, but they have a lot of other stuff to occupy their time. How was it like balancing that vision, and how did you do it with your other responsibilities?
I will be very honest. The Utah Shakespeare Festival, it was easy to begin. I was newly married, and my wife was a partner in it. We did it together. We had fun doing it together. And as she had babies, I acknowledged them and went back to rehearsal. When they had Little League, I got there for part of the game sometimes. My wife would be there on the front cheering for both of us. I had a remarkable partner, in other words, that carried both her share and somewhat my share of the parenting. I had the fortunate pleasure that my daughters, both as soon as they could walk, became involved in the Shakespeare Festival. So they became part of my world. My son's was another story. At 16, my oldest son had earned enough money to buy a motorcycle, and I very wisely told him he couldn't. I was not going to have my kid's knees on some asphalt road. So he went out and joined the rodeo club and became a bull rider, which makes motorcycle crashes a kid's play. And I watched my son, I watched him gored by a bull, thrown over a stands in Pocatello. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I didn't have a lot to do with my boys, and I regretted that. We'd become close in later life, but then I was involved in something he wasn't in. Neither one were interested in Shakespeare, so they became hunters and ball players and bull riders, and I tolerated it as much as I could. It was easy to be grandfather because now the festival is huge. There's a machine to do it. There's people running the festival. All I do is walk around occasionally and wave. So I had lots of time for my grandchildren. And kind of made up my parenting on that level, I'm afraid. But it is hard. And when you have your vision and you start in business or life and whatever you choose, there is going to be choices to make, and those choices are going to be hard. If I had it to do again, I don't know if I wouldn't have found a way to be a little less immersed in what I was doing in order to be a little more a father. But that's hindsight. Okay, I think we did it. Boredom to death. Thank you again. Appreciate it.